like to take this opportunity to thank those people who gave the courage to invite me to speak on the panel, because I'm speaking after luminaries and so forth, and sometimes you are wondering if you are going to let everybody down. But when I was asking myself why was I invited, I was reminded of somebody who defined sociologists as agent provocateur, and I hope I'm going to be one today. And my contention is, as Jan was saying, that it is a good idea to have rights. My contention will be, it's okay to have rights, but if those rights are not exercised, then those rights are not worth a lot. So I have a few slides, and I'm going to jump a number of them because some of the things have been said already. I don't need to repeat them, but just to try to say where I'm coming from. I am of the view that too much focus on economic and social integration, as far as I'm concerned, is not right. And unless people engage in the political process, we don't get the opportunity to start thinking about the whole idea of identity, which integration is about. It's only when you move to the political sphere that, in actual fact, the whole idea of inclusion, identity, that's how you bring all the elements together. And I have been interested, particularly since moving to Ireland over 16 years ago, to try to find out how I can define myself, but also maybe work very hard to make sure that my children are not going to be expanding their presence in Ireland and in Europe for that matter in 15 years' time. And the question I always ask myself, when does one cease to be a migrant? When does one cease to be a refugee? So that's a question which I'm going to leave with you, and then you can think about it, and then you can talk about it. It will only happen, in my point of view, if and when you are accepted, your presence is acknowledged, it's appreciated, but also you are given the right to say on how the society is governed. If you are seen as if you are a member of the periphery, then you'll be on the periphery forever. I won't bother you talking about the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and also all the sort of convention, international convention, which talk about civic and political participation, because it has already been covered earlier on in various sessions. But what I want to say is, it's very critical to differentiate what you call those electoral politics and non-electoral politics. And I have a feeling that political participation should be a continuum. It should not be limited to one, but should be leading to the other one. And the electoral politics and lobbying can be combined to a better effect rather than just focusing on only one. So I was also interested, for my own intellectual curiosity, to figure out what has happened, and it was only when I read some sort of a political scientist from Australia who was documenting how much time it took migrants to be active in political life in Australia, and I saw a generation, and it made me think, maybe, that's too much. We can't wait for 30 years to engage with politics in Ireland. And then I started to try to figure out what was going on and how I could actually intervene. Unfortunately, it took me about 6 years to realize I had the right to vote in the local elections, because I was never told. But when I discovered I had the right, I can guarantee you I've been using it, and that's what I'm going to talk about. So going back to Ireland, we have various sorts of rights depending on the kind of elections. For general elections, Irish and British citizens may vote. For the Senate elections, interestingly enough, I had the right to vote in the Senate elections before I got the right to vote in the general elections. What do I mean? Because I was a graduate of one of the universities, University College Dublin, I became an automatic voter in the Senate elections. And I actually used it since I left the college since I graduated in 1999. European elections, yes, it's Irish and EU nationals. Referendums, it's only for Irish citizens. Presidential elections, again, it's for only Irish citizens. But the good news is, for local elections, anybody who's legally resident, not even legally resident, anybody who is regularly resident has the right to vote in the local and stand in the local elections. And I'll be giving you some examples. And as I said, I only discovered it after a long time that I had the right to vote in the local elections, but in actual fact, this provision has existed for a long time, probably the year I was born, 1963. But it took me 6 years, and I don't have time to go into how I discovered and so forth. It can be an issue of question and answers later on. But after I discovered the provision, myself and a number of actors, we decided, okay, this is good news. We have to announce the news. So a few of us set up an organization called Africa Center. And in 2003, we went out, we asked political parties what we were doing in terms of including third country nationals and so forth. And lucky enough, we uncovered the fact that one of the political parties excluded non-EU from its membership. It's a party that doesn't exist anymore, the Progressive Democrats. And as a result of uncovering this, we actually got some sorts of media headlines on the day, and questions were even raised in higher echelons of the Irish public debate and parliament and so forth. Thankfully, the party changed their constitution to allow non-EU to become members. And obviously, the fact that it was covered in the newspapers helped us in building up a case. And as a result, then we encouraged migrants to participate, both as voters but also as candidates. Also, at the same time, another process was taking place. In 2004, in the run-up to the local elections, two organizations, the National Consultative Committee on Racism and Interculturalism and Integrating Ireland, produced a manual highlighting how people could register and participate in the local elections. So by highlighting the issue in 2003, we encouraged other actors to come on board. It didn't stop there, because in 2004, we went back to the political parties to see if anything had changed, just before the local elections in June 2004. We had a lot of talk, but in practice, the political parties had moved just a few inches. But things will change, and I'll be talking about it very shortly. The next issue was to go back to members of the African communities in Ireland to ask them, are you aware of your rights? Unfortunately, we discovered that very few people knew they could vote and stand in the local elections. But since then, things have moved on. In 2008, the local authorities in Dublin City Council, launched an initiative aimed at encouraging migrants to register for the local elections. Other county councils followed suit, and going back again a few years back, I remember Professor Joe Shaw came to Ireland, and I organized meetings for her, and we went to meet one of the local authorities, the head of franchise, and we did ask if any effort was being made to encourage migrants to register, and basically the official told us it was everybody gets letter in the post, so if they don't come back to us, we don't go back to them. I have to say the situation has changed, and now a lot of effort is being made. In 2009, we had billboards, we had signs on buses. In fact, I have even a picture of some of the electoral material to encourage people to vote in various languages, and even in Irish, obviously, but also in English. And the question is, how many registered and how many actually cast their vote? I mean, that will be a subject of further investigation in the future, and I know my friends from University College Dublin are here, so hopefully they'll take it on, and in a few years' time they'll tell us what happened. And, it's not new, political participation in Ireland, so I discovered that South African Dr. Musa Bamji was actually elected to the parliament in 1992. But as he said he was an Indian among the cowboys, and he did not stand again in 1997, which is a pity. And then we had some successes in 2004, and I need just to mention one of them, Rotimi Adebari, actually became a mayor of a town called Portlish, which has a population of 15,000. And he wasn't a citizen, even then, which is very interesting. You know, it can be used, but you need people who have the right, you know, conditioning, who are able to use to maximize their presence and also win votes. We had also a Dutch person who got involved in politics, and he was able to retain his seat. So going on, in 2009, the journey had not started, but it continued. We had a number of candidates from migrant background. Unfortunately, none of them, not got elected. Having said that, in 2009, 4 people of migrant background got elected in the local elections. The only bad news is for every 10 candidates, only 1 candidate was elected, whereas the general average for the mainstream candidate was 1 in 3. So we have to do a bit of work and maybe discourage people who don't have a right to, a chance to win from standing in the first place. Maybe tell them what is needed to be done before you stand. Interestingly enough, political parties joined the debate and they engaged with migrant communities. So as you can see, we had over 40 candidates and only 8 were independent candidates. The others were selected by political parties, and we have a number of countries and so forth. I don't need to repeat them. So I want to go back again to Rotimi Adebari, who got elected as mayor in 2007. I mean, I will never forget being there. It was history in the making. In a small town outside Dublin, 100 kilometers, we had cameras from different media news outlets. And interestingly enough, we got invited to go everywhere to go and speak about the Irish experience. Just as an anecdote, he was invited by the Israeli government, and then when he went to the embassy to say thanks for the invitation, he told them, by the way, I'm not a citizen. I don't have an Irish passport. So actually, I need a visa to travel to Israel. And the embassy said, so you can be elected, become a mayor without citizenship? Of course, it was possible. He has since become a citizen, and he also was a candidate in the 2011 general election. So that's after the election, he was invited to go to the parliament, and that's a photograph of himself and his wife at Leinster House, that's our parliament. Also in the 2009 local elections, everybody came on board, and even our former Minister for Integration hosted an event where all migrant candidates were invited to come and meet with the politicians, but also have a discussion about the importance of political participation. Hopefully this will continue. But also, you'll be glad to know that our former leader of the opposition, Karen Taoiseach, had the time to pause with candidates of migrant background in the 2009 local elections. But the question is, what kind of influence does the local governments have in Ireland? It's very limited. So it is symbolic, but I have to say, if you have to call for effective change, you have to move beyond the local elections. Unfortunately, those people who stood for the general elections of migrant background, they all stood as independents. None of them was representing a party, and it is very difficult to become actually, to get votes if you are only an individual, unless you are a celebrity. So I have some electoral material for 2 of the candidates, so people are welcome to have a look at them during the break. So basically, then we said, okay, that's not enough. That's me again, causing trouble. During the campaign in February, I started realizing that people would come and meet people like me, and they assume we have no vote. So we ran a campaign called Counter Zing to remind the political parties and canvassers that they should engage with us. They have to talk to us. And what prompted this campaign was actually somebody who ran the office and said that, some canvassers go to her house. She happened to be from East Asia, and we have domestic workers from East Asia. So when they knocked at the door, they said, "Oh, where is Mr. and Mrs. of the house?" And she was so offended. She took on the political party saying, "Okay, this is not good enough. I am here. You know, I may look different, but I'm a British citizen and I have the right to vote." So as a result, we ran a campaign to encourage the political parties to engage with people who are naturalized, but also to remind the canvassers that they should not judge people by either the color of their skin or their accent. So, you know, we did a stunt, so that's a photograph in front of the parliament. And I have to say, the initiative has been recognized as a good practice, and it appeared recently in Cities of Migration, which goes out to about 7,000 practitioners around the world. So I have already spoken about some of the initiatives, but I hope to mention another one which is very important, talking about political parties. One of the organizations, the NGOs based in Dublin called Crosshair, is currently running a shadowing scheme where they are getting people of migrant background who are interested in politics to shadow elected representatives, get their skills, get an understanding of how the political system works, and then if they decide to become involved in politics, then they can do it. I'm coming very close to the end. I know the clock is ticking and people have questions to ask and so forth. I'll finish by some sort of personal observations. Personally, I feel very strongly about allowing the people to vote in the local elections. Because, you know, if you are living in a neighborhood, you need to know how safe your environment is, how clean it is, and so forth. So you cannot just be an observer, you have to be an active person. It's great to have the right to vote, but if there is no awareness, if it is not promoted, then the right may not be exercised. I have to say, migrants themselves, activists, have been playing a big role in terms of highlighting the voting rights, but also encouraging migrants themselves to stand in the local elections. If people had not pushed the boundaries, we could be waiting for campaigns by the local authorities for registration. It's great to have political opportunity, but also we have to be wary of political parties exploiting the migrant vote. I'll give you an example. There is a particular constituency in Northwest Dublin where we had 3 candidates vying for the Nigerian community vote. And it was done in a very sort of subtle, smart way to get the migrants to vote for their core ethnic and then give a second preference to the candidates from the party. And as a result, all the Nigerians stole the votes of each other. None of them got elected, whereas mainstream political parties' candidate who got the number 2 from the migrant communities actually, because of proportional representation, got elected. Also, for people who want to stand in politics, in Ireland particularly, we have a lot of emphasis on local credentials. So anybody who wants to stand, I'll tell them, if you have no local credentials, you can forget it, you won't be elected. And finally, my final point is, you know, being accepted in the local area does not necessarily mean you are accepted at a national level. So there has to be a link between local participation and also national participation. Because you could be a mayor of a town, but you could be an outsider to somebody else who does not necessarily know where you come from. So we need to make sure that the whole idea of identity is debated, and hopefully in the future it will be natural to get some of the characters I referred to standing for the European elections, for example. Let's say we come to a situation where it happens naturally without having to push the votes too far. Thank you very much.